My name's Dale Verran. I'm the CEO for Fortune Bay Corp. We're a junior listed company in Canada on the TSX-V under the symbol FOR, and in Frankfurt under the symbol 5QN. We also recently began trading on the OTCQX under the symbol FTBYF. Our company has two advanced gold projects, one being the Goldfields Project in Saskatchewan, and our asset in Mexico, the Ixhuatán Project. Both projects across the categories around 3 million ounces of gold. We focus on the Goldfields Project in Saskatchewan, and that project is currently under a PEA. We're also advancing two uranium projects, which are right near our Goldfields Project in Saskatchewan, and they have potential for high-grade Athabasca Basin related uranium deposits.
Good stuff, Dale. Good to see you. We saw you back in May, but we wanted to kind of reach out to companies that we think have got something about them in terms of the management team and the assets, and see what they're doing in difficult markets. And we're definitely in a difficult market at the moment. And we're going to lean today, I think, slightly towards the kind of gold side of the story, because again, I think that's interesting, especially when gold prices come off in terms of how companies approach that one. But we better tip our hat towards the uranium stuff. People super excited about what you've got there and what you're doing. So go on, give us the update. How's the uranium going?
Uranium's going great. We started drilling this earlier this sort of late spring and into the summer months. We've got two uranium projects, the Strike and Murmac projects, and we began the drilling at the Strike projects, where we've done some ground gravity surveying through the winter and early spring. And the idea was to test these EM conductors. So the EM conductors are these favorable graphitic rocks that typically host these Athabasca-related deposits. And to generate targets along these EM conductors, we did some gravity surveying and came up with some really nice gravity targets. We compiled that with all the historical data, which included data sets from Cameco, where they've done more detailed boots on the ground prospecting, and we commenced drilling targets this spring. Now, the idea was to test across these EM conductors that had never been drilled before, and it was really exciting because we saw all the right hallmarks for these types of uranium deposits. We completed 9 holes testing some of these targets, and we had some really favorable results. Our team's really excited about what we found there. In all the 9 holes, we intersected the right rock types. That was a great start, these graphitic rocks. We confirmed the graphites there. And in those graphitic rocks, we saw these structures where these fluids can move. And on top of that, we saw alteration, and we found some elevated radioactivity. So that indicates there's a presence of uranium there. We're still waiting for assays, but we're really excited about what we've found. And that really tells us we've got what we believe is a mineralizing system on the property. The right geological processes have been in play, and there's potential to find a nearby uranium deposit where we've had some of these elevated counts of radioactivity.
Okay, so you're finding what you want. Is, I guess it's trying to put that into language that people understand. And you got a little bit technical there in the sense of the structures that you're finding, and it's giving you confidence that you're going to find what you need to find. But what do you think the market's going to react to? Are you going to have to find the deposits? You're going to have to find the source of this uranium, and how do you play it?
Yeah, this is the first time these have ever been tested, and we're certainly seeing the right types of things. And the market reaction really will come when we can drill some higher grade uranium. We're still waiting for the assay results from this drilling campaign. So they will see the actual uranium numbers in terms of U308 in the rock, and we'll be able to report that along with looking for the right types of pathfinders. Knowing that we're in the right area, chasing the right types of settings for these deposits. So, this is really the initial results, and the initial results have shown that we've got all the right ingredients there, and we've found what we believe some mineralization or indications of uranium. And we won't get the actual numbers until those assays come out, and that could be sort of, anything from 3 to 6 weeks.
Okay, so not far off at all. I mean, are you tempted to, in terms of getting those messages into market, in this market specifically, companies have done that and the market has not reacted at all. So in terms of how do you time that information flowing into the marketplace, are you how do you feel about that one? Because it's a tough one.
Yeah, timing's tricky, and you can never quite get that right. But we've got a plan. We've done our drilling. We showed what we got from the initial results. When the assays come out, that's likely going to be material for us. We'll release that, and we'll have to see where the market's at. I mean, the uranium price is still pretty strong at $50 a pound, but obviously the equity markets in general are certainly down. So we'll put those results out, and we'll have a plan to then follow up, and hopefully as markets improve later this year, and we'll be able to raise some more money at better prices.
Which is the prayer and the hope from lots of CEOs at the moment. Markets come and go, and that we usually come out the other side. So I think that's well understood. It's a question of like, how do you time it in terms of how do you preserve or how do you allocate capital? So 9 holes into this thing, is that this done until the assays come out and until the market recovers, or do you plan to go back in there?
Well, the initial plan was to test these 9 targets across Strike and get some initial results that we could then interpret and then take the project forward. So it's really a first pass of testing these targets. We have some terrific targets at our Murmac project as well, and we announced those last month. And Murmac, it really also the right ingredients are there. So we wanted to also test that project, and across the 2 projects determine where the most favorable areas are for further focus. Now, of course, we're hoping for a nice high-grade intercept from Murmac. Whether it comes or not, we'll have to see what the results generate. But the idea is to get a test of these conductors across the properties and determine where the best areas are for follow-up, because we certainly see the right ingredients from the historical data, from our geophysical data sets, the boots on the ground prospecting we've done, that we're in the right area to make a discovery.
Right. And obviously this is a relatively new thing for the company, and so not for you, your track record and the team, your team's track record in terms of the uranium space is long and illustrious, but have you had any other kind of thoughts about what this company becomes? Because I want to talk to you about the gold component, right? That's why I actually called you. I want to talk about the gold component. That bit hasn't gone away, despite gold price coming off a little bit. I think that's gold is a much more accessible and investable area for lots of investors. But for those in the know, perhaps uranium is a bit more exciting. Can you be all things to all men and run those 2 parallel tracks? Yeah,
when we raised our money in December, we certainly had interest from investors for us to pursue, both commodities. The gold really helps underpin our value. We've got an advanced project there in Goldfields, 1 million ounces indicated, 200,000 inferred. It's a project that has, great infrastructure. It's got a development permit. So that with a P underway there, that it really underpins, our value to the company. And then obviously some big upside there on the uranium exploration. So, investors really wanted to see us pursue both and like the combination, the diversification. But down the road, we certainly could look at spinning the uranium out. I think there's a tremendous opportunity there. The 2 projects would stand very well on their own in a company, and with the ability to perhaps add other projects into that. So that's certainly something that's been discussed, and it's really, it's a matter of we'll see where we go in terms of results. We'll see where the markets go. And, that's something that we'll evaluate more carefully toward the fall or end of the year when we look to raise money again.
Right. Okay. And I guess we can talk another time about how you kind of play the uranium component in this market. We've seen a little bit of M&A. We've seen a little bit of, smaller companies coming in with small projects, hoping to advance them into a kind of positive uranium market. It's come off a little bit from the sort of low 60s down to 50s, but compared to where it was 12 months ago, price is right. But what's happening in the marketplace? If you don't mind me tapping you up for a bit of insider insight into what's happening in the market at the moment, is Russia the problem, or is it wider than that? Yeah,
I think that's certainly playing into that. Production out of Kazakhstan, where we see 40% of the world's uranium production coming from. I think there are fears of security of supply there, and people looking to more safer jurisdictions, for uranium. Certainly a lot of activity in the US, and some of those companies performing really well. And I think that generally the fundamentals remain really strong for uranium. We've seen, the EU talk about nuclear projects being green in nature, and that really plays in well. So all the fundamentals are there. The uranium price is still quite good. The markets have obviously come off. All the uranium juniors have come off from previous highs, toward the end of last year. But I think it's a terrific time to be investing in uranium, and I think we're going to see a lot of exploration to come, a lot of these development projects move forward, and production come online, particularly focused in some of these safer jurisdictions, like Canada and the US.
Okay. Well, let's tap this up another day, another conversation about the uranium specifically. Here to talk about gold. You've got some gold projects. Mexico we've talked about at length previously in terms of how you move that one forward. I mean, Ixhuatán is something that's been and take this in the nicest possible way, a sort of problem child for you about how do you play that in a Mexican market, which is, kind of slightly saturated in the sense of there's lots of, precious metal stories coming out of there. You've obviously, got an inferred gold resource on that one, but what's the preferred route of attack on that component? Because I think I want to talk about the Goldfields Project specifically. So what are you doing with Mexico?
The Mexican asset, we have certainly looked at, there's two ways we can look at that. One is a sort of pipeline asset for the company. It's not a problem to hold the project. The mining concession is good for 50 years. We can continue to do that. Obviously, there's a cost associated with doing that. Holding it, we'd definitely look to turn there at some point as a pipeline asset. It's a project that's just got tremendous potential on the exploration side. It's obviously got that resource. It's across the categories, 1.7 million ounces in gold, some really nice high grades near surface there. So something that could produce revenue, and then terrific exploration potential with this big porphyry system at depth that's giving rise to the epithermal systems such as Campamento, which is the resource, skarn mineralization, and then the porphyry itself, where there's been some tremendous holes drilled. So in terms of, either it's a pipeline asset for us, or it's something we could look to spin out in the nearer term to unlock some value. Now, we've certainly been talking to people about that and had a lot of interest, but we haven't quite arrived at the right transaction. We had some detailed discussions going with one party for a while, but that didn't materialize in the end. But certainly interest, and it's about finding the right partner in the shorter term to unlock value, or potentially turning to it as a pipeline asset in future.
So pipeline asset suggests you'd need a chunk of money to kind of, one, develop this thing out and maybe add to it with satellite projects or additional projects elsewhere in Mexico. What's the likelihood of that? What's the appetite for that at board level?
Well, there's certainly, the board and our technical team recognize the potential in that project. So it would require raising money to go down there and start some work. We've already identified what needs to happen in terms of the next steps. So we have a clear plan on budgets and what that technical work would entail. So definitely, there is some interest, but it's a project that it's in southern Mexico and Chiapas, so it's not a well-established mining state. And on the community front, there's certainly more work that needs to be done in terms of establishing access. So you have to negotiate with the local ejidos, which are the community groups, to get access. That's been done successfully in the past. We're confident can be done again in future. We've had some of our people go down there and talk to the communities, and there's overall a positive view toward starting some work. But it does take time to do that and do that right, and then maintain those relationships. So it takes a bit of legwork. So it's something that we'd could look to start as certainly on the community side, and then look to actually get boots on the ground to get work done. But it's not as easy as operating in Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan just a very easy top-ranked jurisdiction to go do work. So especially when the company really got going again in amongst COVID, obvious focus is Saskatchewan. But that's a great pipeline asset we can turn to in Mexico to unlock value for the company.
Okay, so obviously, 1.7 million ounces, all categories of resources is worth something to someone. You're in no rush to offload it in the sense that you can keep this thing for a while. But you kind of hit the nail on the head there. There are discussions going on now with investors saying, well, what does a tier 1 jurisdiction mean anymore? Like Mexico, talks of nationalization on lithium projects. the more broad conversation around socialism. We're seeing some, stories coming out of Chile, coming out of Colombia, Peru. South America is starting to look like a basket case. Again, it has in the past, it will in the future. But there are a lot of, and I do appreciate there's a lot of companies operating down there. It's like, is it still a tier 1 jurisdiction, or do we need to look at this on a state by state basis rather than just nationally?
Yeah, I think Mexico certainly had its fair share of challenges recently, specifically for mining companies, and it's I'd say the risks are likely greater there, and it is something you need to look at on a state by state. There states like Chihuahua, Sonora, which have well established mining histories, mines in operation. Some of those have had issues lately, but there's being down in southern Mexico. It's less well established. So there's a lot more education that needs to go into the communities about mining, the exploration process, and we'll take that sort of effort to get that going. But overall, Mexico, I think it's still a well-established mining jurisdiction. It certainly had challenges recently, but I think it's going to continue. I think there's a need for Mexico to have a strong resource sector.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's see how it goes. But here's the thing. Here's the one that actually gets me going. Is the Goldfields Project that you've got? Okay, you talk about unlocking true potential. So the beginning phase of what you want to do here. So maybe just remind people, what you've got there and what you're trying to do with it.
The Goldfields Project, it's had a long history for sure. It's seen various exploration and studies done in the past. It's a resource it's up near Uranium City. We're about 25 kilometers away, and it's really endowed with some really good attributes. It's got good project infrastructure, a good road from Uranium City. Uranium City itself has an airport. It's got accommodation. There's a power line right to our site. That power line runs down from the hydro station at Charlotte River, which currently feeds Uranium City with power. Our project's got a valid development permit. So in 2008, the previous owner had an environmental impact statement approved by the government of Saskatchewan for an open pit mine and a mill with a capacity of 5,000 tonne per day. So these are a lot of key things for the project. Now, geologically, it's got a resource, a good resource. It's got 1 million ounces roughly indicated, 200,000 inferred. That indicated resource is at a grade of about 1.34 gram a ton. So it's an open pit project. On the geology side, it's we've done a new resource model which incorporates a geological model, which we know there's some higher grade sweet spots near the surface that one can go after early in mine life. Metallurgically, the deposit's very simple. It's really just a pure gold deposit. And when you look at the flow sheets or potential flow sheet, a lot of that, about half that gold comes out through gravity, and the rest then comes out through, the initial flow sheet, it was envisaged flotation and then leach. We're looking at it more from the aspect of going straight from a gravity to a whole ore leach and then a carbon in pulp. So there's it's quite a simple metallurgical. We're looking at a situation, we're looking at around recoveries potentially of 93, 94%, which would be an improvement from the 2011 PFS. So, at the moment that project is in a PEA. We announced that in April, and the PEA really comprises two phases. The first phase being what they call a mine to mill optimization. We're just looking at different business case scenarios for the project and choosing the most preferable scenario to take into the PEA itself. Obviously, also considering the permitting conditions and social conditions.
No, okay, and that's that with Ausenco. It's interesting to me. So, in terms of the historic data and the work that you've done on it, it's not a big resource and it's not particularly high grade, but it's enough to kind of get you going. And talking about mine to mill optimization process suggests that you feel that this thing can accelerate through the phases, as it were, the PEA obviously being the first one. But or is that right? I mean, how are you viewing this?
Yeah, there's certainly different throughput scenarios one could envisage. Having the permit in hand is an advantage, and one could start under that existing permit and then look to expand the operation through amendments to that permit, which are allowed. So, as part of the PEA, we are looking at different mining scenarios, and we'll select the one that we believe is preferable to take through into the detailed PEA.
Right, but I'm more interested in the kind of scale of the ambition here, because, like I say, the company itself, more broadly, you kind of had shareholders part of this story the whole way along. You're dealing with the Mexican component. You kind of got this new thing, with shiny object, which we should be looking at, which is kind of the uranium element. And I think people are rightly excited about that one. But then, looking back at the Goldfields project, is like, do we have an opportunity to actually move into a producing company type profile, just get the ball rolling, and then kind of look to build something up around that? Or is this a typical Canadian, let's drill the bejesus out of this thing and sort of see what size resource we can get to? I'm just sort of intrigued by how you're coming at it, because you're not a Canadian. Yeah,
so there's two sort of aspects to what we're doing at Goldfields. So one is the development side, which is currently the PEA is underway, and we're looking to show the market in today's terms what the project could be, what it's valued at, and what it's going to produce. There's also the exploration aspect. So we did some drilling in last year in 2021, what we called our phase one, and we had some really good. We basically stepped outside of the current resources at the two deposits, Box and Athona. And we demonstrated that the deposits, we expanded both deposits, the mineralization footprints. We had some really nice drill intersections at the Box deposit outside the resource, 8 gram a ton over 12 meters. We had a 13.22 gram a ton over 8 meters. So some really nice higher grade numbers. Now, this is getting a bit deeper, so we'll have to evaluate those as part of the PEA, whether they're open pittable or there's potential for underground. So there's the ability to expand these deposits and build a bigger project here. So in terms of your question, we're certainly wanting to get a snapshot in time what this project's worth with the current resources, with the ability to then expand. And you mentioned a lot of Canadian companies just drilling the bejesus out of these sorts of deposits. And I think what's important is the economics. You can't just keep drilling if it's not going to ultimately become a resource and a reserve at the end of the day. So the PEA really gives us that as that tool, right, to look at the resources as we currently have it and say what is economic, likely economic, what is not, and let that guide future exploration efforts instead of us going and just spending a whole lot of shareholder money. Sure, we can put some nice numbers up on the board, but what does that really mean at the end of the day? So that's what's driving our process here, and it's certainly in line with our strategy to allocate capital wisely and spend shareholders' money in the best way possible.
Okay, get it. And so I'm going to keep pushing on this one, because there's lots of companies saying the same thing. There's a lot of white noise, right? And lots of companies in the same position as you. In fact, lots of companies more broadly in the market, same place as you in terms of what the share price has done, but also in terms of moving to that point where you'll be cash constrained at some point. You're going to need raise some money, and will it be expensive money or not, depending on what your share price is, right? So the work that you've done at Box and Athona in terms of these high grade, 8.74 over 5 meters and 8 grams over 12 meters, it's all kind of good stuff if it's economic. Right, and you'll work on that within the constraints of the PEA. I'm trying to work out is, how do you create a point of differentiation between you and all of these other stories? Because historically, these big, sexy, high-grade gold numbers as headlines have worked in the marketplace. I think in the last 12 months, it hasn't. I think that historically, companies that have got into production kind of get a production multiple on them. That's another way of creating value for shareholders. So it's a question of how do you come at that, and what's the process you're going to go through to work out which route you go down.
Yeah, so the PEA is going to be key for us in terms of putting some numbers out there, what the project's worth, and then depending on results, we can look to continue to de-risk the projects. In other words, go into a PFS level study. And in conjunction with that, we'll decide whether we continue to explore. There's some obvious areas that we could follow up. And obviously, as I mentioned, those areas will be guided by the broader economics of the project. So it's really two paths. We see ourselves going on initially de-risking the asset, looking at what it's worth, and then continue to explore with the ability to, with new drill results, the ability to update the resource in future studies like a PFS or feasibility level study.
Right. So it sounds kind of conventional, and maybe it is. Maybe that is the way this thing goes. But I'm just again trying to sort of speak to companies and work out why they're different from all the rest. And there is a lot of all the rest. Some of whom may become mines eventually, and most of whom won't. And some of whom will be able to monetize their assets along the way, and some of them won't. So you and your board, you're not mine builders. Are you purporting to be mine builders, or would you monetize it along the study process?
Yeah, we're not mine builders. I'll be the first to admit that. I'm a geologist by background, and a lot of experience in exploration and development, and that's really what I've been brought in to do is take the project through those parts. Down the road, we're certainly open to different options. Whether our company evolves into a production company, it's certainly one scenario. Or we can look to monetize the assets through a sale or opportunity with a partner. And I think, generally speaking, there's a market for these types of projects out there. We know that gold mining companies need to replenish their reserves, and I think they're looking for projects in safer jurisdictions, and we certainly have that. And in terms of those differentiators you're asking about, Matt, I think where our project stands out, while it's not the biggest or the highest grade, we believe it's going to produce some really robust economics, and it has all the other things around it that make it different. And that's one, top jurisdiction. It's in Saskatchewan. That recently ranked number 1 in Canada by the Fraser Institutes. 2, we've got the project infrastructure, the road, the power line to sites. We're near Uranium City. It's an operating town. It has an airport. And then 3, the permit. It's already had environmental screening. And I should also add on that permitting side, the social considerations. The Uranium City community and the First Nations communities in that area, there's a strong mining history there. A lot of the people have worked on mines in Saskatchewan. Uranium City itself was a mining town, and so there's we amongst people we've spoken to, there's a strong desire to see something happen again in that area. So I think those are some key things that make our project different from other projects, and with some strong economics behind it, we believe it's the project that can go the distance.